What's up, snappers? I'm Sefir and I want to show you how I built a double helix or DNA shaped garden in ARK Survival Evolved. This was purposely designed as a DNA molecule because the theme of this build is life and survival. I'm gonna tell you how I made it so you can rebuild it if you want. And this is a fairly simple build, to be honest. It's repetitive and massive, but still simple. I need to give a huge thank you to the creator of the Gardendeko mods. She made a custom mod for this build that may turn into ARK trees in the future, but without her help this build wouldn't have worked. Check her link in the description below. Thank you all for coming. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and here we go! It's about life, so it goes in the water. Fairly simple, right? While all my friends were surviving death and corruption in the shape of David Tennant, exploring and taming and actually having fun.
Oh my god, you're cute!
I was building as usual. Go check that video out. So I carefully aligned my character, and in the center of this lake, I placed my center foundation and made a foundation grid pretty similar to this one.
A few minutes later.
It's a 39 by 39, but I did it on uneven terrain and I'm gonna show you how. I started with a 3 by 3, but honestly, this is just a grid. As long as you're snapping foundations and your gaps are not more than 4 foundations wide, you're gonna be good. Whenever my foundations started clipping into the terrain, I used pillars to rise the next foundation set. Counted 15 foundations starting from the center one, and did the same in the other 3 sides of the grid. In the last side, I had to sink foundations instead of rising them. I sunk foundations in odd quantities, snapped a foundation to the last pillar, removed the pillars, and snapped foundations back until I had a high foundation next to a low foundation. Then I connected them with fence foundations. I made a video specifically talking about how to build on uneven terrain using these techniques. If you need to understand more about connecting foundation supports at different heights, you should definitely check that video out. Some parts got pretty messy like this one, but since I had different foundation heights connected together, I didn't worry much about how I was snapping things. As long as they snapped, they were going to work. When foundations at different heights started to meet together, I just joined them with fence foundations. And once I had a solid foundation support around the area, I started closing the gaps with more foundations. I found places where foundations at different heights met, but I didn't connect them because all the foundations now belonged to a solid foundation ring. But it's not a bad idea to overkill the foundation support transfer anyway. Remember, the goal here is to make a single solid foundation support that will allow you to build whatever you want above it as long as it's snapped. I did connect some of the foundations at different heights with fence foundations just in case, and then I randomly snapped a lot of ceilings to verify the foundation support was working as intended. Please have in mind that I had to extend and improve this foundation support later down the line, especially when I reached the borders of it. Now this is a very important thing. Since the beginning I knew that I wanted the base of my build just a bit below the water level, and I got lucky with this pillar. Remember that I counted to 15? The pillar was foundation 14, so I placed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 ceilings. Then 14 ceilings into the center, 14 ceilings into the border, and I completed a 29 by 29. Then I made my first circle, the first of 66. I snapped a wall to the center ceiling and a ceiling to the corner of that wall. The corner of that new ceiling is the center of my build, and I made a circle out of it. Snapped a triangle ceiling inside the square ceiling and another triangle ceiling looking to the opposite direction. Completed a 2 by 2 with square ceilings and snapped fence foundations to the outer snap points of the triangle ceilings and the center snap points between square ceilings. I like to call this the special case because those 3 fence foundations are giving us all the snap points we need to make a 24-sided circle. Now comes a step that I did later, but if you care about your heart rate, your blood pressure, and your overall stress levels, learn from my mistakes and please do this now. I threw a pillar down from the center of my build, placed a ceiling on it, and connected that ceiling to the foundations around with fence foundations. I didn't want to risk the build, so I did this 4 times before destroying the corner pillar that was supporting the platform. Made sure the fence foundations were connected to the ceiling and the foundations, removed the pillar above, and made sure the pillars below were still connected to the glass ceilings. And then I went for the pillar in the corner. But I did this after my structure was fully built. Don't do that to yourself. Play it safe. Do it in the beginning. But back to the first circle, I placed a pillar on every fence foundation, and for the sake of speed, I placed a ceiling above every pillar, 2 walls from every ceiling, and a ceiling between the walls. Then I destroyed the pillars and the ceiling stayed there because wildcard, of course, but do you remember the y-axis? The ceilings stayed there because the fence foundations are grabbing them, and with my first circle done, I was ready to start sinking pillars. Look at this ceiling. I call it the ground level because it's the only place where I won't sink any pillars. This happens 4 times in the base of a spiral, and I purposely wanted the ground level to not look into any of the cardinal points of the build. Looking at the front of my build, I counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And that's where I placed my first beam. The length of it doesn't matter for now, but I'm gonna talk about it later. I made a mistake and you can see me fixing it. The pattern of the sinks is the very same that I've done for spirals before. From the ground level, the first pillar is sunk 10 times, then 8, 6, 4, 2, and ground level again. I did this in reverse and you can see me fixing it, but this is what it should actually look like. The first layer of pillars is snapped to the ceilings and the other layers are sunk. When sinking 8 and 10 times, you will need to drop walls and ceilings like this to keep sinking pillars. And once you're done with all your pillar sinks, it's time to move to the next step. If you have doubts, this is the amount of sinks on each step, and I have 2 tutorials on spirals and my spiral base, so check them out. This is the first beam and it's on ground level like I said before. Each beam will be 11 ceilings long from the center of the build, and that's gonna be 21 in total. And pardon me, but I have to get a bit nerdy now. This is a square and it has 4 90-degree angles. This is an equiangular triangle and it has 3 60-degree angles. If we place a fence foundation here, we will be able to snap another fence foundation at a 45-degree angle, and that fence foundation will grab the ceiling to the side. I want to know if you know the measures of these 2 angles and why this is working. Let me know in the comments. Back to the build, we're going to work between the 4th and the 5th ceiling because that's where the sides of the structure meet corner to corner. I like to call it the perfect meet, even if it's not perfect at all because it's just an easy reference. I went to the next beam and placed 2 pillars up from the last sink and ceilings past the perfect meet. Then this got pretty messy, so I'm gonna explain it with a cleaner one. I snapped a triangle looking away from the 4th ceiling. I don't know how you're gonna do this with official settings, but I'm rooting for you.
Do it! Make your dreams come true!
Nah, you just gotta make sure your triangle ceilings come first. Then I placed a fence foundation in the outer snap point of the triangle, and looking at this corner, I snapped a fence foundation at a 45-degree angle. That fence foundation is holding the entire beam, so just be careful. I placed 21 ceilings in total and hung walls on both sides. Since the fence foundation is holding the beam, it's safe to remove the pillars. I'm gonna explain the float once again and then move to the next part. Go to the last pillar sink of your next beam and bring 2 pillars up from your previous beam. Place a ceiling at the top of the pillar and snap a triangle looking away from your 4th ceiling. Then snap a fence foundation at the outer snap point of the triangle, and looking at this corner, snap a fence foundation to the previous fence foundation at a 45-degree angle. Remove the pillar and finish your beam. I made 28 beams, counting the one on the ground level, and yep, that's twice that amount of circles, plus some more circles on the base of the building. You will notice that at some point I went through an existing beam to make another one above it, and that's what I'm gonna show you now. The first time I did this, my character couldn't walk between the beams, and that's why I used pillar sinks again in the spiral. Ceilings offset pillars, and I wanted a consistent height between the beams, so I brought the pillars up from the bottom of the build. Once I knew the ceiling I had to remove, I supported the beam around it, removed the ceiling, and then continued with the pillars. Once I got to the right height, I made the floats again. Once I finished the beams, I removed the pillar sinks and started the circles. These were done the same way I did the first one, so I'm just gonna focus on the troubleshooting. I started with 2 triangle ceilings as usual. Sometimes I had an issue with that fence foundation getting sunk, and I just placed a temporary ceiling below that snap point. I also had to do the same to place some pillars, and that's pretty much it. Here's an aerial view of the circle making because time lapses are cool, and if you ever thought you need to practice circles, here's here's your time to shine. I don't think I have to explain you how to place rails, but the stairs are pretty important, and I have to thank Jotun Bandit for her help here. I placed a ceiling across the beam, a stair from the ceiling, a ceiling to the bottom of the stair, a decorative double door frame, a triangle ceiling, and a stair from it. If you place the railings after the stairs, you don't have to worry about removing any railings. And once I finished with the stairs on both sides, I worked with the bottom, which is more circles because I never get tired of it. This is the base of the build. Remember the perfect meet at the 4th ceiling. That's also happening at ceilings number 12 and number 19. I'm talking a bit more so you can look at it, and because some people complain I go too fast. But I answer all the questions I can here in the comments or in my Discord. Check the link in the description below. And I'm sorry I don't have an exact number, but the front sides seem to be 28 or 30 ceilings long. And speaking of the front, I made the circles like this. I went about 3 ceilings behind the front circle, placed a wall below the ceilings and 2 ceilings in the corners of that wall. Snapped 2 triangle ceilings and you already know what's coming. I did exactly the same for the last one, and that was circle number 66. I hope you're not getting discouraged by these numbers. I just want to be honest with you. This is tedious, but it's even more rewarding. Once I realized I did this, I didn't have too many words to describe it, and this is the experience I want to share with all of you. And we're almost there, so let's keep going. Before placing the trees, there's one more trick I want to show you. By placing a triangle ceiling and a wall to it, I got a higher snap point that I did twice in a row. And I did this to place some croplets above the water because, you know, this is a garden. It needs croplets. You place a triangle ceiling and toggle a wall below it until it rises. Then you remove the triangle ceiling and do the trick again. I did this twice to get some wooden ceilings above the water, but I still placed some greenhouse ceilings below to snap some railings to them. And finally, we can talk about the tree placing. I have to thank Jotun Bandit again because she told me to arrange the trees as the base pairs in a DNA molecule. So I used this picture to make a vertical color code for each side of the build. And for the sake of randomizing stuff a bit, I assigned 2 trees for every color. Let's see. Cherry tree is red, of course. Extinction tree is orange. Baobab is green, and the pink one is blue. Yeah, right. I used this one as the alternate red, the alternate orange, and I may have used the green version of this tree as the alternate green, but I'm not really sure. Then I used these Luma trees as alternates for blue. I arranged them in my hotbar in a logical way for me and just followed the list. The main reason I chose ARK trees is because of the resizing options. This helped me keep proportions that worked for the build and not against it. If you want to use it, there's a link in the description below. In the base of the build, I used the same trees without repeating them except for the baobab tree because I fell in love with it. I duplicated the support at the other side of the helix and used a baobab tree as the centerpiece of my build. And there you have it. You may notice I'm changing things a bit. I was a teacher and I don't see a better way of explaining snap points and building glitches than telling and showing. Let me know in the comments what you think about this format I'm working on. I still have a time-lapse and showcase for you, so let's go. This video is about to end after the showcase. I hope you all liked my build. You can download it using the link in the description below. Enjoy the showcase, thank you all for coming, don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and see you next time.